Now we're going to talk about the absolutely essential tools that you will need to start sewing. The picture you see here is an actual picture of the sewing box that I use. It is a toolbox that I bought at Home Depot for probably about $10, and it is awesome. I would never use anything except for this toolbox. There's tons of space, and as long as I've been sewing, I've just amassed a huge collection of sewing tools. So we're going to go over the basics here. This is what you absolutely need to start sewing, and let's get started. First, you'll need pins to hold your pieces of fabric together while you sew. I recommend buying quilter's pins instead of dressmaker pins because they are longer and thinner, and they have these colored balls on the top, so if they fall on the floor, you can find them a little bit easier. Next, you'll need a pin cushion to keep your pins in. This is the very classic tomato shape. In that little strawberry on there are pieces of emery like you would find on a nail file. So you can put your pins in there and kind of run them back and forth and get off any barbs or weird edges and kind of smooth them out again. And then if you drop your pins on the floor, they won't fall out because they'll all be stuck inside this pin cushion, and it's just very handy. You will need a measuring tape. In sewing, especially sewing garments, there are a lot of curves, and a measuring tape will help you measure those curves better than a straight ruler. You also will use a measuring tape to take your own body measurements. A seam gauge is a small metal ruler, usually about 6 inches long, with a little slider on it that you can set at the measurement that you want. I use this for hems all the time. So in this illustration that you see that I've provided, the blue slider is set at 5/8 of an inch. So how I would use it is I would fold up my hem and then measure along the fold to make sure that all my hem all the way around was 5/8 of an inch. But you can use this for lots of different small measurements that you might need to do. A seam ripper is used to take out lines of stitching. We all make mistakes. I make them all the time, and a seam ripper is your savior for if you've sewn a line of stitching. It's totally wrong. You put the pieces together wrong. Grab that seam ripper. The little point digs under the stitches, and there's a little blade there that cuts them, and then that's how you take out your stitching line. Once you start sewing, and especially when you start using a pattern, you will need to make marks on your fabric. You'll make marks on your fabric to know where to sew darts, know where to sew pleats, to know where to sew buttons and buttonholes and all those different things. My favorite tool to use is an air erasable marking pen. I think it's the easiest. It disappears in 24 hours. It shows up on most colors unless the color is black. The only thing you have to be careful of when you use one of these is to not iron your fabric before the ink has disappeared. Otherwise, it's permanently set, and you don't want that. Another marking tool that you might use a lot is a chalk pencil. I use a chalk pencil when I'm working on dark colored fabrics. With one of these, you will remove it with water and a washcloth. This is a start to sew kit. Personally, I don't like anything in here because they are cheap basics and they wear out really quickly. But if you aren't sure that you want to sew as a hobby, you can buy one of these. I think they go for about $10 or $12 at Joann's or Hobby Lobby or any of the craft stores. Let's unpack this here and I'll show you what's inside. Okay, here is a start to sew kit unpacked. You have scissors and measuring tape, a pin cushion, a thimble and a needle threader, a seam ripper, a tracing wheel, a seam gauge, some needles, a chalk pencil and tracing paper, and hand needles. Now, Number one, never use dressmaker pins, a tracing wheel, or tracing paper. I will explain in a later video why I never use those things. The other things are fine. If you want to pursue sewing as a hobby, I would quickly replace anything in here. It's just all really cheap. And the scissors wear out quickly, and the pins are stubby and thick, and I just don't like anything in there. So you can get one of these if you are not sure if you want to sew as a hobby, but if you do, just go straight for the better stuff.